We're live in the building. Yes. Welcome everybody. We're live right now in the Forum, Bath. We were gonna be in Story Smith, Bristol, but we had to upgrade the venue, and now we're in a 1700-seater Art Deco building in the center of Bath. My name is Joshua Luke Smith. It's a pleasure to be with you. Before I bring on Rob to the stage, because we were just chatting backstage in the green room, we were talking about how we both miss the experience of the live event. So I want this to feel as much as possible that we're all in the room together. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome onto the stage Mr. Velvet Elvis himself, Robert Holmes Bell. Make some noise. Rob, the crowd are going crazy. There's a standing ovation. Rob Bell is live in England right now. Whether you're in England or you're in Europe, this is happening. Rob is in the building.
Yes, it is happening in my front yard in Los Angeles, in England.
Live from LA. This is amazing. Before we go any further, there's a little tab that says questions. So if you want to ask some questions, how could you not come to this event ready to ask some questions? If you got some questions brewing, you can just put them in the questions tab, and later on in the evening, we'll get down to answering some questions. Or Rob will get down to answering some questions. Yeah, everyone can hear? Sweet. We're doing this, bruv. We're live. The people can hear us. The auditorium is packed out right now.
It looks like you're just Joshua Luke Smith in a really big room. That's what it looks like from here.
We've gone so big on this.
Like three of you in like a really big room.
I know. I feel like you may have been expecting a Zoom call from my lounge, and we just couldn't do it. We had to like go with the two black magic cameras and the light set up.
This tells me something about you. This tells us all something about you. You don't just do Zoom in your sweatpants.
That's it. That is it. I want you to feel like you're in England right now, because I know you would.
What I do. Touring in England has always been incredibly special to me. There's something about the first time I came and spoke. It honestly, there's some sort of connection that I don't even know. I don't even know what it is, but I absolutely, and like the last tour I went to Bristol.
Yes. Yeah.
Or the tour before that for the first time. And like I'd never been to Bristol. Right. And yet like I walked out on stage and was like, God, why does this feel like home?
Right.
Very surreal.
Ipswich,
nice. Manchester, like you name the Cheltenham, you name those. I mean, some of the most fun, most meaningful events I've ever done have been Doncaster.
Like who tours in Doncaster? That's amazing.
Right. And I always ask the booking agent, please, obviously London, somewhere near Liverpool, but then please do half the tour. Places Stoke-on-Trent, please, Wolverhampton, please. I want to do cities I've never been before. And I want people to look at the list of the UK tour and be like, what?
Yeah.
Why? He's going where?
Yeah.
Because that's just for me. Like,
I remember you saying you did a show in Fresno. Now I don't really know much about Fresno, but I remember you saying it's like it was one of the best shows you ever did, and yet it was one of the places that you sort of least expected that to almost be an audience.
Fresno is the Doncaster of California. And that's often where the moment people are like, why are you here?
Yeah.
You know it's going to be a great time.
Yeah, totally. 100%. Bro, I feel deeply for any artist who has released something into the world this year for a couple of reasons.
Yeah.
One, touring. Yeah. We were talking before, just missing touring. But two, just the ability to celebrate what you're putting out into the world with other people, like being in a room with a bunch of people where you might just be talking about what you put out, and now it's texts and it's calls and stuff. So can we begin by just celebrating the fact that a month ago this book came out, and it's in the world now, And I would love to hear from you what this last month has been like, of just, because it's literally, I was thinking about, it's about a month to the day, I think, that it dropped. It was like the 15th or 14th of September.
Yeah, 15th.
How are you feeling?
Well, there's something, well, first off, this book is different than my other books. It's much more, it has much more an element of life story, like what it's like to be me. So the interactions about the book are of a different nature, because there's what's the word? A vulnerable, tender, open-hearted.
Yes.
So many people I've interacted with found themselves in the book.
Yes.
Which was my hope all along. So, and I never know. Generally, a book is about something. So after a couple of interviews, I always joke there's about 7 questions that each book has surrounding it that you just know in an interview. But with this book, I never have any idea. I have no idea what you're going to want to talk about from reading the book.
Right.
So there's like this, it's like my 11th book, but it felt when I was writing it like it was my first book.
Yes.
And watching it go out into the world and releasing a book from my front yard.
Yeah.
And these very, very strange, surreal times.
Yes.
No, it has been like such an open-hearted, moving experience for me. I'm honestly like a rebirth or a starting over or something. Yeah, really, really, really special.
Does that?
Yeah.
This is your 11th book. Like 11. I've got this here, bruv. Can you see this? This is between me and Dom. This is what we have. I'm gonna read them out real quick. All right, real quick. Zim Zum of Love, Velvet Elvis, Drop Like Stars, Sex God, How It Be Here, Love Wins. What we talk about when we talk about God and what is the Bible, right? So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of your books, not including Everything Is Spiritual. There's 2 more. And so we got a little Rob Bell trivia to kick the night off, right? Check this out. Without Google, the first person who can post the 2 books that are missing, one clue, one of them is a deep cut, and the other one is like back of the record store kind of record. You got to search a few records to find it. First person that can put the 2 books that aren't here gets Everything Is Spiritual hard copy from Story Smith in Bristol to have or to give to a friend. Go. All right. I was gonna say, Rob, I was chatting to my friend Elaine. Elaine did the artwork for this event, the illustration. I think Elaine is watching. Shout out Philly, aka the hand.
Thank you, Elaine. Seriously talented.
And she texted me after I read it, and she said, "What did you think?" And I said, it's like when someone asks you, what's your favorite, how did you find the Christopher Nolan film that you just saw? And you can't say it was good. And you can't say I enjoyed it. It's a different kind of experience that kind of, it transcends those responses. And when you watch a Christopher Nolan film, you're so wrapped around a concept that you are continually trying to understand. And yet, this is how I found with Inception. I cried through Inception. Like something was happening in me that was so deep and visceral and emotional, and I didn't understand the concept of it. But it was wrapping itself around something, right? The last scene of Inception, Leonardo DiCaprio says to the older man, he says, "One day we'll be young men together again," right? And I lost it. And I was crying. I was like, I don't even know why I'm crying. I don't even understand Christopher Nolan's physics and concept here. And it was the same thing with Everything Is Spiritual. That at the end of the book, you return to the beginning of the book. You talk about the feeling of this rumbling of something, this idea, this like concept of pulling together your like personal experience, your personal story, and also the biggest questions any human being could ask about what their place in the world is. And then you talk about beginning to think about writing a book. And as I'm reading it, I don't think you're talking about writing the book that I'm reading until you talk about, your grandma had cash in her bra. And I had to put down the book of like, this is Inception. This is a book within a book. Like, it has no chapters. It has no conventional sort of like form. It begins and then it kind of ends, but it doesn't really end because it started all over again at the beginning, you know? Like,
Yes.
it's just, it's different to anything you've written before. And I'm just wondering what it was like writing it, like what it was like going all the way back to the farmhouse, you know, to your uncle,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, at one level, the book is a feeling, much as anything. There's like a feeling imprinted on it that we're on this ball of rock hurtling through space at 67,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
We're made up of these atoms, which are relationships of energy.
Yeah.
We're having these feelings of love and loss and euphoria and heartbreak. The whole thing is incredibly tenuous and fragile. It's more than a bit dodgy, as you all would say. And yet, in the midst of the pain and ache and heartbreak and loss and mess of life, there's this propulsive feeling a millimeter below the surface of invitation, of energy, of love, of a sense that, like, you think about all the moments all of us have had, because in many ways the book is about embarrassing, awkward moments where things didn't go right.
Why did you dress up as a sheriff?
As sheriff, exactly. And yet you can keep saying yes, and you can trust that something is happening even in this mess, some new creation. Even the past half year of pandemic, with all of the upheaval and the tension and anxiety, all of the political upheaval, something just below the surface inviting us to consider something new. Is there a new creation lurking in all of this? To become bigger, wider, more expansive, loving, gracious, humble, generous people, to reorder the world in better ways that serves everybody better, to protect the vulnerable, to use whatever we have to bless those who need it. Like, so in some senses, the creative, the imprint of the creator is in the creation. And so that book had tears. I just kept typing. My mantra was, what opens the heart?
Wow. Oof.
What opens the heart? Which is sinking down from head. It's easy to get stuck in your head. Fear, the internet, the critics, the tribe that doesn't understand the direction you're heading in, all the ways that everybody gets locked up. And then they're sinking down into heart, because heart, soul knows. Listening to that, taking the next step with humility and conviction and passion. You know what I mean? So that's where the book comes from. And then what was interesting about what you just asked, I knew double down on the particulars of my life, because that's where I'll find everybody else.
That's what was so bad, was that you're talking, where did you grow up? Was it Grand Rapids? Where was the farm?
Yeah, Okemos, Michigan, like just the middle of the state of Michigan in the Midwest in the United States, in a suburb next to a farm town. I'm reading
that's
all I got.
I'm reading
that's all I got.
And I'm reading the particular of it, and it's like it's a million miles from my upbringing. Like couldn't be more different. And I'm just on the edge of like this, and I like genuinely, like I don't just turn on the waterworks. Like it takes a lot for me to really have that, you know, when your eyes start just stinging and you just know it's coming. But it was all the way through the book. You're talking about sitting on the porch with your grandma. Is that Eileen?
Yes.
Right? And it was the moment in the book where you talked about Eileen, and then your daughter ordering from Starbucks, and she used the name Eileen. And I'm like a mess, and I'm thinking, like, what is it that's so moving here? And I think it was the validation of just our everyday human experience and relating to one another, and you giving it just space for me to then put my, my unique experience in and say, oh, that stuff actually matters. Like that stuff is the shaping of us. Like where you are right now with your 11 books and your story and everything that you've done, that you're giving space to sitting on the porch with your grandmother, and you're giving space to these unique, you getting up at camp to preach the first sermon of like, no, this was the stuff. It wasn't the big moments. It was these. And suddenly
Yes.
I felt, honestly, bro, I felt a bit of a grief of like, oh, I haven't valued those, like I haven't,
Right.
I've moved past them. And I don't know if anybody else related to that, but I really appreciate you being so specific, because it helped me be specific and honor the small things.
Yeah, the universals are always hiding in the particulars. So polarization, political polarization of any sort, is the inability to see yourself in another person.
Right. Wow.
So we become polarized when we see somebody else and we are completely unable to see anything of ourselves in this person.
Wow.
And the only way forward is to open our hearts up to each other about where we come from and how we were shaped and what it felt like to be us.
Yes.
Because there's always the chance that somewhere in space between us, one of us will see ourselves in the other. And that's what leads to entirely, you may still passionately disagree with somebody about whatever the particular, but for instance, if somebody was raised in a world of lack and scarcity, and all they were ever taught is that the universe is a static, fixed place with a limited amount of bounty, and you have to go out there and fight for your piece of it. So it was always competition, envy, jealousy, protect yourself at all costs, fight, struggle. No wonder that person is going to vote a particular way.
Yes.
No wonder that person is going to interact with somebody not like them in a particular way. So you may be deeply opposed to that person's worldview, political mindset, whatever, and yet you can at least, of course, they would see the world that way. They were trained by their system perfectly.
Yes.
And so it was very, for me, I kept putting my hand on my heart. All I got is telling you what it was like to be me.
Wow.
And all you have is what it was like to be you. And that alone may actually be revolutionary, because a child isn't a blank slate. We're like in the book I talk about, it's like we're born into a drama. It's like we're born onto a stage in the middle of a play.
I love that.
And there's already these lines of dialogue. There's the plots. There are these characters. And suddenly we're looking around like we're born into a thing that's already in motion, and reflecting on that. That's not nostalgia or being stuck in the past. That's the actual wonder and mystery of life is, good God, look who I come from. Look where I come from. And yet now we're here. That's amazing.
I know,
What a story.
There's this phrase that you use that I love, and I've shared it so many times. We haven't done this before. Like, but it's also with the context of like, I don't know about you, or as far as I'm aware, you haven't done this before. Like you haven't lived that day ever before. So why did you expect that you would get it, that you would do it exactly as someone might expect you to, or, come under all these sort of pressures. You haven't been this way before. We haven't been this way before. And I
love it, Go keep a guy, just recently, this guy that I just love, he emailed me and he said, in one of his questions, where he just said, why is growth so hard? And I was laughing so hard. I sent him this email back, and then we got laughed, like however you laugh through email. But I was like, compared to what?
Right.
Did you have some other experience somewhere that you're comparing this go around to.
Right. Wow.
Like even the stories that we tell, even this past 6 months, and all of the ways people like I should be more creative. I should have more energy. I should like in our house we don't should on ourselves.
Yeah,
There will be
come
no
on.
shoulding on ourselves. Anytime you see somebody beating themselves up over their inability to whatever it is in this lockdown quarantine
Right.
pandemic, I just start laughing. Like compared to the other global pandemics,
Yeah. That you lived through. Yeah.
this entire phenomenon we're all experiencing, from the individual to the collective, grace, grace. Did you think you would nail it on the
Right.
first try?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
did you think? I mean, you think about money, where you live, sexuality, relationships, forgiveness, bitterness, loss, betrayal. Did we think that we would like somehow magically just know how to do this effortlessly on the first
Right.
try? That's why the book in many ways is just all the stuff that didn't go that well.
Yeah. How did you find writing about it? Like even hearing you talk about your process of writing it, of what was the phrase, the mantra? What opens the heart?
Yeah.
I feel like you had to trust yourself in it, you know, like with everything you were saying of there's always the critics, there's the tribe that doesn't understand, there's the, you know, how will this book land? There must have been a huge amount of trusting yourself, like trusting where you were kind of going, because you hadn't necessarily written in that way or walked that way before. Did you feel that?
Yeah, and each new thing I make, the real art is listening to it. The great American architect Louis Kahn, before he would design a building, would ask, what does this building want to be? So for me, the work has always been like listening to it, almost like interviewing it. What does it want to be?
Wow.
What does it want to be? And that's the only interesting question anyway. And then you follow it. And sort of that feeling and that practice of listening to it as it arises within me and then following it and making it. I just organize my whole life around it because that's where all the life is. And then you're just not listening to other voices. You're just following. And this one, in some ways, I remember typing the line, I felt so much shame.
Yeah.
Which is when I was talking about this one period.
Yeah.
I felt, and I remember typing that and thinking to myself, that's not a Rob Bell sentence. That's so boring. That's got no pyrotechnics in it. It's just like I felt so much shame, period. But that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
And there was this almost like innocence of just tell what happened, tell what it was like, tell what you learned, tell what it reminded you of, what you thought about, and then, okay, what's next?
Yeah.
Tell what happened.
Yeah.
Tell what it was like.
Yeah.
It was like, just trust. I would be typing. I remember on tour last summer typing outside of a laundromat on a Sunday morning in South London.
Oh, no way.
And my daughter is on her phone, Violet, next to me playing a video game, and I'm typing away. And I remember I would pause and just sort of look around as I thought, okay, what's the next thing here?
Wow.
Well, what opens the heart? What did you learn? What was it like?
Wow.
There it is.
Wow.
And then I just keep typing.
Wow.
Yeah, I would sit there with this laptop at all these different places over the course of that year and a half. That's what it was like.
I love hearing you talk about just following something.
Yes.
At the beginning, you talk about that the moment you're at camp and you get up and you share your first talk, right? And bro, there is a line in that story where you say, I'm gonna get it wrong, but you say something to the effect of, and I knew this is what I was gonna do for the rest of my life. Like, without even fully knowing exactly what it was that you were doing, you were like, there's something in this that, and you know, to anyone listening, like I think, or who's read the book even, like that line is almost piercing. Like, I don't know how many people have ever felt that and it might not be they haven't felt it, but it might be that there was so much other stuff that they didn't feel like they were allowed to feel, that of like that sense of confidence of like, this is it, man, like this brings me to life. Like, and something I think often comes up in people is, why do I deserve to do what I love? Why do I deserve to do what brings me life, you know? And could you speak to that? Because that, however old you were, like, you know, if you were to tell that kid, yeah, bro, 11 books later, this many tours later, like, we did it. We did it, and we're still doing it, you know? But just speak to that feeling and the process of following it.
What a wonderful question, because I actually, Joshua, honestly, one of the things that animates my work is the desire to create spaces where people could listen to their own deepest knowledge. Because we all possess a deep knowing. Christ in you, you in the Christ, intuition, whatever, different traditions name it in different ways. But in my experience, I met you here in LA at that Something to Say event, which was really just me holding up mirrors to people. So people could listen to what they've known the whole time. That much of life is a great act of remembering what you've already known in such a way that it feels like you're hearing it for the first time, and yet it's as old as the earth.
We're our spoken word show right now. Click your fingers. Buzz. Wow. Yes.
So, in my experience, most people have had experiences that resonated with them at deepest levels of the soul. That something resonated with their essence. It might not have been form, like a particular action, but essence. I'm here to organize. I'm here to help. I'm here to fix. I'm here to repair. I'm here to teach. I'm here to soothe. I'm here to explain. I'm here to exclaim. I'm like, and there's too much pain. There's too much struggle. It's too difficult not to do something you love.
That's beautiful.
That's going to find you anyway. I actually wanted people to feel that you can stumble into something you love to do at 21. That is not a past for the aches and pains of life. They're still going to come. So you might as well be doing something that gets you up in the morning with a sense of, oh, I get to do this.
Yes. Bro, can you?
So that's central to what I'm doing is I'm keen to create space where people can hear that and follow it and trust it.
Can you speak to people in the second half of life that you know, are just still, you know, feeling the rumblings and maybe of like, man, I felt that at 21. Dang, like I felt that, and now it feels like it's too far gone, you know? Because I saw on the few days that we had on the retreat, you know, that was some of those powerful times of seeing people that just felt like, I'm 60 now, like, you know, and I just loved some of those conversations.
Right. Because you saw me again and again going, oh, well, imagine the sense of discovery coupled with all the wisdom. It might really get interesting now.
Yes.
It might really get interesting.
Wow.
You think of the accumulated knowledge about how the whole world works, what it means to be a human being. And now you're going to, So what I've seen in second half of life is when somebody does go, wait, what am I here to do? The joy because of the appreciation is like exponential compared to when they're young.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Thinking about a book coming out. Do you? I don't know if this question is going to make sense. I'm just going to go for it. Do you ever feel with a book so vulnerable and a book so open, and you know this very different process in writing it? You finish the book, you give it to your publisher. I don't exactly know how the book world works. Rob, I actually just signed my book deal. I don't know if you remember, but that was the thing that we talked about on the, you know. So I'm going to learn about that world soon enough. But you give it to the publisher, and then you wait, and then the book comes out. is there a sense of, I don't know the word that comes to mind is disappointment. I know it probably isn't that, but a sense of like, oh, okay, so now that's out in the world, like all of that vulnerability and all of that mantra, those moments of leading yourself, trusting yourself, opening up yourself. And now it's gone. Like now it's out, and now people all over the world are reading it. But is there almost like a detachment that you kind of that hurts? That like, okay, I don't have it up close and personal like I did when I was writing it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, but I think I always just, it was like something wanted to be made. So you make it. Actually, this book, I feel like I have a relationship with it.
Right.
In a way I didn't with previous books.
Okay.
And I sent it when I'd finished, when the draft started to get tighter.
Yeah.
Second draft, third draft, fourth draft. I sent it to my friend Elizabeth Gilbert, and she called, and we had this really interesting conversation because she said, because I had this feeling like the book owed me nothing.
Wow.
Writing it was, it helped me own every square inch of my story. It owed me nothing.
Wow, that's
and she read it without me telling her that, and she was like, you are going to have a relationship with this book. She said, you have traditionally put things out into the world and then moved on and made the next thing. But she said, this book doesn't owe you anything. And I was like, oh my word. And she said, you're going to have a relationship with this book.
Wow.
It's different.
Wow. Yeah. This book.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So I did have, it was different writing it. And I had a sense that it's going out into the world and talking about it, and the kind of interaction I'm having with you.
Mm-hmm.
I had a sense that it was going to take me into new spaces with others.
Yeah.
There's like a, I don't know, like a starting over, some sort of innocence or wonder or awe in new ways. Yeah. Very, very meaniful.
You like, I feel I was like jotting down notes as I was reading it, and then I stopped. I was like, this is the wrong way to do it, man. I'm just gonna let it kind of happen. But there was one phrase that I did write down that I've just been going back to. You talk about absence as presence.
Yes.
And that, that's special, man. I'm still wrapping my head around it, wrapping my heart around that. Absence as presence. I would love you to speak to that a little bit and just riff on it, man, because there's something
you can
in
see
there.
People have talked about this for thousands of years, the paradoxes of absence and presence and presence and absence.
Mm-hmm.
There are people you grew up with, maybe siblings, who have been a presence, that you've been with them, and yet it's like you barely know them.
Yeah.
They're almost like a presence and absence in presence. Like you couldn't tell us 10 things about them. There just wasn't a connection, or they were almost just like a body. And then there are other people who, maybe people you loved who have died and have gone on, that aren't here, but they're here.
Yes. Come on, man.
Or you join, like, you get a new job, or you join an organization, and the founder or the boss or the head of the department isn't there anymore. And yet they're almost more there than when they were. And that oftentimes we're born into these unfolding dramas of our lineage. And there are these ones who came before us who are no longer present, but they are present.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And so it's almost a way to understand, or you meet somebody who was in a relationship and the relationship ended, and so to know them, the person that they were with, is somehow present in that space with you and them. And so it's just a way of identifying how human beings go way beyond this body in this geographical location in space and time.
Yes.
We talk about being, I can't make the party, but I'll be there in spirit. And that what happened in the modern age for many people is the body became the exterior boundary of the self. There's your body, your physical body, and then there may or may not be soul, spirit, essence, etc. going on inside body. As opposed to, as a person, our body is something happening within the larger phenomenon of ourselves.
Yeah, right.
And that's actually a much more accurate way to understand who you are.
And I felt like it gave me a lot of permission. I'm genuinely still working this out for myself. You know, I lost a close friend a couple of years ago, and that moment in the book, and you go on, you evoke, you know, the ancient passage of Hebrews, the great cloud of witnesses, right?
Yeah.
And it was permission for acknowledging their current presence, you know.
Yes.
And you grew up, you know, an Englishman, like in the traditions that I have, and there isn't a space created for attachment and closeness and union with what has passed. It's kind of what happened, and now you're here, and now you move on. And I really appreciated that you creating space throughout the book for the people you've lost and the people your family have lost. And you know, you brought us to the graveside, I think, at one point. You know, was your uncle?
Eileen.
It was Eileen. Yeah, it was Eileen. Yeah. And it was just so intimate, but it was just saying, you know, it gave space, not just for grief and not just for the emotions of loss, but actually for the ongoing connections and the ongoing relationships that we don't really talk about in the West in a way that is much more present in the Eastern kind of, you know, thinking. So yeah, that was really special.
Oh, I love that. I love that you said that. My work, there's a bit of work going forward I'm going to be doing, because first we have to think differently about life and death. So here's what I mean. For many people, there's life, and then you die, and then there's death. One mode, life, then after that, a second linear mode, death. But there's this great line where Moses says to these former slaves, I've put before you life and death.
Right.
Now, he's not saying, you do this, you'll live, don't do this, you'll die. In ancient Hebrew consciousness, living and dying were two present modes of being. So you can be living and breathing and have a pulse and circulation, and yet you're dying.
Yes.
So living and dying as present modes that are both available. And then the whole end of the book where I talk about sex and death being present at your conception.
Yeah.
And then you think about, we have a fig tree in our front yard and a lemon tree.
Wow.
And I don't know if you could see anything there, but the very way that nature functions is these seeds, and a tree produces 250,000 seeds. What is it? And a couple of them may produce new trees. So death, and then you have winter and the seasons. Death is not a mode that happens after this life. It is an engine of creation itself all the time.
Wow.
So then you think about the creative process at a biological, botanical level, and then you think about, for you, if you're making an album of 10 songs, I assume you have to write 30 or 40 songs.
Oh yeah.
Like so access and unmet potential is all actually how the thing works. It's not to be feared. It's not to be resisted. It's simply how the whole thing works.
Yes.
So then the people who've come before us, what happens to us after whatever this go around is, don't have to be feared and repressed and avoided. Who, in some senses, people who've gone on before us are more with us than ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
And I think in the modern age, death got relegated to some other realm, and then always the unknown gets filled with fear. And that fear always produces a shadow, and that shadow always has an underbelly, and it always chokes you out of the deepest potentials for this moment right now. So I think a big rethink of death is in the works.
Yes. And when you consider it as you were saying, like it's almost like there's a daily opportunity. There's
Yes.
being in the car, like literally, bro, on the way down here, and I was like racing. I was just trying to get down as quick as I could. And there was a junction where I had to, it was like, do I let the guy go? You know what I mean? Like I have to be here. I'm chatting with Rob Bell in 10 minutes. And there was a death opportunity of like, there's a part of me, because he's got a destination as well. You know what I mean? He's going somewhere as well. And I'm not going to tell you if I did it or not, but the opportunity was there to say, I'm going to die. You know, I'm going to die to that my need or my destination is greater than his. And that energizes me as a concept, as that's what we're invited into, these daily deaths. And as you talk about so beautifully, resurrections, right? Like these opportunities of, coming back like never before.
Yeah. That's well said. I'm glad you made it.
Yeah, me too, bro. Me too. Can you boys keep me on this? I'm speaking to the team right now. We got Josh and Dom. I have no idea what time. I'm just gonna keep going, and I think we've got 2 hours, haven't we? How long have we been going? We've been going 40 minutes. All right. Can you give me a signal at an hour, and then we're gonna do some questions. All right. Beautiful. Rob, I'd love to talk a little bit about how you do your work. They're not productivity questions, they're soulful questions, because when I came back from LA, I said to my wife, I want to be like Rob Bell when I grow up. And the reason I said that was I'm looking at a man who's put out so much significant work into the world, so much that has influenced me massively. And honestly, mate, like just the peace and the calm and the sort of the lack of striving, the lack of like this feeling of I need, something that I don't already have, and it spoke so much to me. And I'd love just to dig into that a little bit. In the book, you get honest about your journey. You talk about the days at Mars Hill and leading this massive church that just blew up like without any, you didn't consider how it could get to that state so quickly, but it did. And you're doing sermons, and then you're doing 3 weddings on the same day, and then you're writing books and you're putting out films, and you talk about burnout. And that was so refreshing. You talk about being in the fetal position on like your office floor, and you brought us into that room. And I wonder if you could speak to the idea, the feeling that we have that if we don't stop, for whatever reason, we won't impact or we won't do what we're here to do. And it feels special, and it feels like a space that we need to create more of in our lives.
Yeah. So how old are you?
I'm 30 this year. I turned 30 this year.
Wow. Yeah. So if you would have met me at 30, man, I was pushing it. I was flying. I remember flying to London, coach. So sitting upright.
Yeah.
So not sleeping, because I'm 6'3", so I can't fit. So everybody around me can recline and fall asleep. I can't get my knees under the chair.
Yeah.
So sitting there upright all night, landing, going right to the publisher, starting at 9 or 10 a.m., doing interviews all day, then getting a quick dinner, and then going to Westminster Hall, across from St. Paul's, and speaking. And then after speaking, going out in the lobby to greet anybody who wanted to say hello.
Yeah.
And then doing 2 or 3 or 4 cities, a city a day, and then flying home to my young family and probably preaching the sermon that Sunday.
Right.
I loved it, but I don't know the terror of non-being. Let's get existential about it.
Yeah.
The fear that, am I okay, so if I just keep working,
Yeah.
that seems
Yeah.
to keep at bay some deep
Yeah.
psycho-spiritual fear
Yeah.
that maybe and I was from a world where the worst thing that can be said about you is that you're lazy.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Have you earned your keep?
and right, right. So yeah, yeah. So it was done with love and done with great passion and
Mm.
intensity, and I really wanted to help people. But we have all these other things going on in there as well.
Mm. Yeah.
You want to make the people around you proud. You feel like you've been given this opportunity, and you don't ever want it to appear as though you feel entitled. Or does any of that
Yeah.
sound familiar?
Yeah.
um,
100%.
and if somebody would have said, and I was just talking to a friend yesterday. He's been my friend for 21 years. One time, right around the time I was your age, he took me to lunch at this Italian restaurant, and he sat across the table from me and he said, "Rob, you don't have to live like this."
Ooh.
And I was like, "Yeah, yeah," because I was just pushing. And no, Rob, you don't have to live like this. I was like, "Yeah, I know." And
Wow.
he's like, "You don't have to live like this."
Wow.
I was like, "I know." And he's like, "You don't have to," and he just kept repeating it.
Wow.
And he just kept repeating it.
Wow.
And I could, that heat, I could feel
Yeah.
like that heat rising within me, not anger, just discomfort. He's like, "Rob, you don't have to live like this." And then
Wow.
the tears
Yeah.
start to come.
The permission.
Um, yeah. And it's like, I could understand at the time what I could understand.
Mm-hmm.
You can understand what you can understand. That's why evolution is a long, slow arc. I mean, there are these defining moments of awakening, but as a general rule, it's a long, slow movement in a particular direction.
Yes. Yes.
So learning there was nothing to prove, learning that all the work has been done, even if it hasn't.
Oof.
I think the terror that there was work you were supposed to do and people you were supposed to help and you didn't help them.
Yes.
Just living with a larger people never belonged to me in the first place. Some of that is just pure ego.
Oh, people never belonged to me in the first place.
They were never mine. Some of that can present itself as humanitarian, selfless compassion, but it's actually a very firm egoic structure.
Yes. Yes.
And then you begin to realize that when you surrender some of that, now you actually can help people.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the twist in all of it.
Yeah.
Is you stop thinking you're a messiah,
Yeah.
and now you might actually be able to help a few people.
Yeah.
But the person who charges in with like, "I'm here to," you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
here. I'm the one you've been waiting for.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the person who actually probably, the life you save may be your own.
Yeah. That's
So
so true.
I'm trying to give you a scatter
No, it's
shot.
good. It's good.
All these different things, because and those who are listening, we're a cocktail of all these different
Yeah.
elements.
Yeah.
And I the last 3 minutes I tried to make it all jumbled to say, what you're doing is you're learning what all these things are that are going on inside your chest.
Yes. Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Oh,
You're learning.
totally.
And like you with a growing family,
Mm.
you will endlessly be in the process of discernment.
Mm.
How many nights away
Mm.
can I be? When does my family come with me? What is it if I am too caught up in the work that I'm missing something central to the work, which is actually having a life?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I, yeah.
And that's all part of it.
I asked you in LA, like it was about some of your rhythms, and you said, and probably where I was going was like, kind of how do you what are your rhythms in your day, and you answered saying, well, I come downstairs and I warm up the waffle machine, and I make waffles for my daughter. And there's different things that happen, but that happens every day. And I was like 4 months away from becoming a father, my little girl being born, and it hit me hard of like, wow, it's going back to the book. It's like these moments that we so often think are kind of the passing moments to get us to the big moments are actually the moments. Like that's it. Like Eden was like, my daughter was like, I don't know, 4 weeks old, and there was a coffee shop in town, like the first one that opened up after lockdown, right? Coffees and bagels. I'll take you to it when you come at Bath. And I go there with Eden, and we're in the queue. It's this tiny little place in the queue to get in, one person at a time. And there's this older gentleman. He's probably like late 60s, maybe 70. And I've literally got my like 4-week-old daughter. And he turns around to me and he says, how old is she? And I was like, she's a month old. And his eyes start sort of welling up. And I said, do you have kids? And he says, yeah, they're in their 30s now. And I said, okay, what advice would you give to a young father? And he didn't just stream with tears. He started sobbing, like he started crying. And he's crying, and he just says, like through his tears, he says, you'll never get those moments back, And he said, I worked relentlessly, and I always said to myself, next week will be less. Next week will be less, or, I'm doing it for the family. And now I'm realizing I missed some of these moments that were so special. And I just felt like it was the prophet outside the bagel shop speaking to this young dad, being like, it begins now. And it ordered something in me,
Oh, I love that. I love that. Yes. And that is actually the shift for me.
Yeah.
When you're earlier on, you're living for these big moments.
Yeah.
Of performance,
yeah.
execution,
yes,
impressing, accomplishment. And what can easily happen is the rest of life becomes waiting room.
Right. Yeah.
For the next thing.
Yeah.
And what happened to me is that didn't work. So I sort of crashed. And then I had to flip them. And the highest moments of life is the everyday stuff.
Yeah.
My son and I went grocery shopping last night. Went to 2 different grocery stores because the one has stuff I like and the other one talking the whole time. The parking attendant at the one store is my buddy.
Trader Joe's?
Trader Joe's.
Yeah, come on, man.
That became, you find the divine down in the valley.
Oh, come on.
And then when I could see, flip it around, and then if I go out and do some work, great.
Yeah.
How fun is that?
Yeah. Yeah.
But don't be one more person who's telling stories about airplanes and hotels.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Because so a grounded life with the people I love in this neighborhood is the center.
Yes.
And when you meet people, you can tell.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell whether they're still playing the old game, or whether they've come to see where the real life is.
Yes. Okay. So we learn to stop playing the game. Like we learn to just drop the ball.
Yeah.
Like, oh snap! I don't play this game anymore. How did you find moving into that? I mean, I know this is a journey. It's an evolution. It's a soulful kind of process. But learning to, okay, I'm going to play a different game. And I would imagine, just speaking from my own experience, some of the stuff that comes up is this sort of this trembling of like, what if I miss out? Like what if I let go and I prioritize this and it means I miss that? And have you, with the amount that you've done over the years and still doing, can you sort of pinpoint the parts of your journey where you were like, yeah, that's when I really stopped playing that game, and that kind of comparison and that the ego fears of not being significant, blah, 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 began to sort of quiet themselves a little more?
Right. What a great question, because I remember realizing that I had to make peace with my limits.
Ooh.
And it felt like I s- your question makes me think of the feeling of, I think I've said no to 99% of the opportunities that came along,
Right.
and I've only actually done a few things. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
But the few things that you do, if you're fully present in them and you're not rushed and
Mm.
it's not crammed in among a bunch of other things. And my
Mhm.
wife, Kristen, early on said, yeah, sure, you could do those 10 things. Or you could do 3 things with the presence and
Mm.
intention and energy that would have been put into those 10 things. And
Oh,
those 3 things might contain the presence and life force.
right.
I began to see it almost like a laser beam that when it's focused in on less things,
Mm.
the beam has just more heat and intensity. So
Yes.
that was an image that helped me with all of the, oh man, I could be in that city. Oh,
Yeah,
I could be
right.
doing that. Um, and I, so I had to think about it that way.
Mhm.
Of course, there's always going to be a million things you could be doing.
Mhm.
But then it was actually some ancient texts in the book of Genesis. Jacob wakes up by the side of the road and he says,
Come on.
surely God was in this place and I
Oof.
wasn't aware of it.
Bruv. I've been in that
And
I've been in that story recently. Oh.
that uh the idea that there is a depth
Yeah.
in every moment.
Yeah.
And I remember reading this ancient commentary on Moses. The bush is burning and Moses is simply moving slowly enough that he sees it, that you're passing burning bushes all the time.
Yeah, come on.
Honestly, those ancient commentaries on those ancient stories, my consciousness like opened
Yeah.
to, is there something I'm missing
Yeah.
in the grit and details of every day?
Wow. Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
and obviously Zen, I mean,
Yeah.
you have a number of different lineages that are about presence and intention,
Yes. Yeah.
doing a few things in an uncluttered way
Mhm.
in which you are fully present.
Yeah.
And I just began to notice in a conversation with somebody where I would just ask one more question, like, wait, tell me more about that.
Mm.
What was that like?
Yeah, come on.
What did you feel the next
Oh,
day?
yes.
And I just noticed that when instead of do this, then get to the next thing, do 3 weddings in one day,
Yeah.
I noticed that when I slowed down and instead of past, present, and future, I began to move into an eternal now
Oh, come
in
on.
which we can only ever be here. The only thing that's going on forever is now.
Yeah.
Um, something happened.
Yeah.
Something was happening in which almost the bottom dropped out of the present moment. It became infinitely interesting.
Oh,
And that's when things profoundly began to change.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's the best
bro.
way to explain it.
And I love it. Man, I've just got like, I'm in it as you're talking. I don't want to go anywhere else. I'm like,
Yes,
that's the
yes.
good
So
stuff, man.
the feeling that you weren't thinking about anything but our interaction for the past few minutes.
Yeah. I forgot we had cameras there. I was where it went
Right.
out. Okay.
Okay. So you noticed that you forgot there were
Yeah.
cameras. You can also forget that there's something up ahead.
Yeah. Right.
And actually worry is stuck in the future
Mm,
and regret is stuck in the past.
mm,
So you can see how fully present actually has something to do with space-time continuum. It has
yes.
something to do with the anxieties of past and present.
Right.
Um, so there's actually something Moses asked the divine, what is your name? I am.
Mm,
which is the being that transcends any conception of linear past,
Yeah.
present, future time.
I am. Yeah.
In every tradition, at
Yes.
some level, every wise person who ever went up a mountain and came back down with a message, the only message they ever came back with was now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
So that's what happened to me.
So
That's
good,
what happened to
Rob.
me. And interestingly enough, when you live like that, you end up making, it's weirdly enough how you end up making a number of things
Yeah.
and doing things. You're just coming from a completely different place.
Yes. It's like where you were going, the destination changed like dramatically. You got onto a different path, and it speaks for itself, man. I've got like a gazillion questions in my head, but I feel like let's pause and have we got some questions that have come in? So yeah, I'm gonna jump on my iPad here to forgive the tech clumsiness in this moment. I'm gonna try and all right, let me see if these have come through. Hold up, my friends. We're doing this. Could I grab the phone that you've texted me with the questions? Because, oh no, hold up. We got it. Okay. All right. We got a bunch of questions, Rob. You ready?
I love it that you and I are having this conversation, but there's all these people
I know there's all these people
who I can't see who we're with in some way. Hi,
Oh,
everybody.
mate, we've covered some of these. Okay.
Great.
Okay. All right. This is a good one. Rob, what would you say to younger Rob Bell now with all you have lived, thought, and written?
What would I say?
What would you say to younger Rob Bell now? Can I jump on that?
I'd say to
just with something from the book.
Sure. Yeah.
Just I'm just thinking of like youth leader Rob Bell in that room where the guy's preaching on hell and you have to pull up the blinds and like the fires are raging outside and you're like, you're thinking some thoughts. There's so many like these younger glimpses of yourself on this journey, yeah, what would you say to him?
I would say, okay, here's the deal, dude. Take way better care of yourself. There's gonna be plenty of time, but you gotta take much better care of yourself.
Yeah.
And then I would say you're just getting started and it's gonna get so fun.
Wow.
It's actually gonna get just better and better.
Wow.
So if you're enjoying this now,
wow.
Like literally, Joshua, my 22-year-old son and I are about to launch a project we've been working on together.
Really?
You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Come on, bro.
I mean, I don't even know. What do I do? I don't even know. Yeah, he and I have been working together.
Oh my goodness.
On some stuff.
Oh man.
I mean, I don't even know. Where do I even?
Yeah. That's phenomenal. That's special. That's special. Oh wow. Okay, I'm just reading some of these through. Let me just taking some of these questions. Okay, wow, this is powerful. In this season of collective trauma, that's a powerful phrase. It's been interesting to watch how some people have become more compassionate and others less so.
Yep.
You talk about grief a lot on the Robcast in your books. Do you think this time? Of being all? I don't understand the last bit of that question. Do you think this time of all being cracked open? I think it's This is a season of collective trauma. And some people are moving towards compassion, some people not. Do you want to speak to that?
Absolutely. There's a historic pattern in play here, thousands of years old. In times of disruption, upheaval, disorientation, and trauma, the general human pattern is there are two paths lurking in those experiences. The one path is to allow that pain and disorientation to shut you down, to constrict, to shrink, and generally to regress, often idealizing some earlier time before this time of disorientation, and idealizing it as greater than it even was. Let's just make it great again. If I could just go back there.
Right.
And so the dominant subtle energies, and sometimes even overt, are digging in your heels and resisting, which inevitably, when you resist what is, shrinks the soul.
Yeah.
It constricts the heart.
Yeah.
And it leaves bitterness, entitlement.
Yeah.
This was mine, it got taken. And ultimately, underneath all of those, disempowerment, something has happened to me. And disempowerment generally leads you to despair.
Wow.
Among other things.
Yeah.
Anger, rage, etc. The other path is to allow the pain of the disorientation, the trauma, to break you open and to open you up so that you actually expand along with the universe, which is expanding for 13 billion years.
Right.
And that creates new imagination, new creation, and new possibilities. And you can see in America after 9/11, there were two responses. The one response was, why did this happen? Who has America been in the world? Is America and America's insatiable hunger and thirst for oil, has the American military machine actually provoked people in all sorts of destructive ways around? These are questions we should ask. Is there some way that our tribe acts and moves in the world that is actually destructive for the world?
Right.
So 9/11, for a number of people, opened up a whole new world of questions.
Yes.
And very meaningful discussion about who the U.S. is in the world. Another group of people waved the flag even higher. These colors don't run. The red, white, and blue will put a boot in your ass. Another round of country songs, and away we go. So, and then the political is always simply the magnification of the personal.
Yes.
It's the macro of the micro. So yeah, this person, they're on it with that question.
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
like you can see right now, these two, you can see we just need to reopen the economy and get this thing back to what it was. The other question is, wait, an economy that after a couple of days is on the verge of a Great Depression, a couple of days of lockdown, and this economy is on the verge of another Great Depression, that's a terrible economy.
Right.
Like your measure of stock market, there must be some other way to measure economic health.
Yeah,
because this stock market measurement actually only benefits people who have interest in stock markets.
Right. Yes. Yes.
So that's what's happening right now. We have a term in our house. Kristen and I have talked about apocalyptic hope because for many people, talk about these days feel like an apocalypse. It feels apocalyptic. And what we mean by apocalyptic generally is an ending. But the word apocalypse is an ancient Greek word. And apocalypse means a revealing or a disclosure. So an apocalypse historically is not an ending. It is a revealing of what is.
Right. Dang.
So what you're seeing right now in the world is a number of these systems don't actually protect the vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah.
They aren't good for living sustainably on the earth.
Yes.
They don't, in America especially, have any sort of unified healthcare system. Education, political structures, they're not serving people as they were intended to.
Yes.
So it's painful, it's brutal, it's the financial stress, and yet you can't build something new until you fully disclose how broken the current thing is. So I would call it apocalyptic hope. It makes your head hurt. It produces very real pain and stress in the world, and yet it's how you get
to a
new world.
Yes. And I
The
feel,
only way.
yeah, I feel that's the irony of this year being 2020 and this whole,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
so now we're seeing, now we do have 2020
Yes.
vision, and what we're seeing is destruction and pain and things that
Absolutely.
always existed below the surface. It really wasn't that deep. All it needed was a few things to go wrong.
And we often in our own lives don't change until the current arrangement doesn't work
Yeah.
sufficiently.
Right.
We generally take some element of pain or discomfort to jolt us into what's necessary for new arrangements and new orders and new creations.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's actually
Wow.
a lot of very, very ancient patterns that we are right in the midst of. So this is
Yes.
new, but it's also not new.
Yeah.
And that's what's so important for everybody
Yeah.
to realize.
Yeah. Bro, that's amazing. All right. Okay, going back to youth group, Rob. All right. This person is asking, what would you say, Rob, to the current youth generation and culture? Yeah, good question, man. What would you say to the current youth generation and culture?
You're right.
Ooh.
I would say you're right. Your sense that the gatekeepers did not do their job in properly stewarding creation. You're right. Your sense that the people who are in charge of the economic structures,
Yeah.
it didn't trickle down.
Yeah.
It didn't protect the vulnerable. Your sense that arrangement didn't, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Wow.
And that sense that there could be a whole new way of thinking about politics, that systemic racism actually could be addressed in meaningful ways by listening to those who have so much to teach us, and then proper changes being made at every level. Your sense that this whole thing actually could be reordered in a better way. You're right. It could be.
Wow.
Could be.
Wow.
I keep
beautiful.
talking about an example. Imagine if every political debate going forward on the television screen next to the politician who was speaking were all the companies they receive money from.
Oof.
Like it's a representative democracy.
Yes.
That's not a representative democracy.
Yeah.
But just basics. I think about my kids. There's so many things where they're just like, they can't even comprehend so many policies and so many things in the world. And they're right.
Yeah.
They don't have to.
Yeah.
We could just reorder this.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I would say. I would say you're right.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, you're right. And you actually can, you actually can find work you love.
Yeah.
And you can actually go do that work.
Yeah.
And you actually can have a great life.
Yeah.
Not without all the usual aches and pains, but it actually, whoever told you that the whole thing is a struggle to be endured, it's an adventure that you get to go on.
Yeah.
And your sense that that's what it is, you're right.
Yeah. That's beautiful, man. What I'm kind of just going to riff on that question, because in your book you spend quite a lot of time talking about that world of youth group kind of leading and that young formation, and even in yourself. I mean, we all have different experiences of that, and reflections on it, like looking back to those teenage years where you start learning about these massive concepts and ideas. And, for me growing up and beginning to hear the story of Jesus and all these different elements, what would you speak to that specifically, like in terms of, in reflection of that period of time? I don't know, let's say sort of that 9 to in your mid-teens, and you're grasping so much about the world, and at the same time you're being taught this framework for faith and spirituality. What would be some of your reflections on that, or what would you kind of speak into that process?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I distinctly remember hearing those Jesus stories, and my impression being that whenever there was an ordered ranked hierarchy of who's on top and who's on bottom, that in the Jesus stories, he always insists there's another way to rank the world.
Yes.
The first will be last.
Yeah, come on.
That struck me because I lived in a world of ranking, the most popular kids, the best athletes, the best students. In your sort of adolescent mind,
Yeah.
the world around me is ranked, that greatness looks like this.
Yes.
And the Jesus stories had a subversive. So they were always very punk rock to me.
Yeah.
Because they were always insisting that there was other ways to see hierarchy.
Yes.
And then secondly, whenever there was an in-group that had pushed somebody to the edge, in the Jesus stories, he always goes and sides with the person on the edge.
Mm-hmm.
And that, at almost like a primal level of the psyche, did something to me. And then most of the time when he's asked a question, he responds with a question.
Yeah.
So from a young age, you have to, he says, how do you read it? How do you think about it? How do you interpret it? So whatever I understood about these Jesus stories, they were the opposite of brainwashing. And I didn't grow up like, I've met people who will talk about like they were part of a denomination, or they, at a kid, did like a confirmation or a catechism, sort of where they were tested. That none of that, I didn't have any of that. So I didn't have like a religion.
Yes.
It wasn't like Christianity even. I don't remember there ever being like it was just these stories had done something to me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They were an experience.
Right.
Even later on, I remember people would criticize me for doctrine and dogma, and you didn't.
Yeah.
But I don't remember signing up.
Yeah.
Like, I think you think I'm playing a game that I'm not playing.
Yeah.
Like, I had an experience, and I continue to have experiences. In the book, I talk about the soil and sand and water and trees. I had these direct experiences of the dynamic nature of creation and the sense of transcendence present in the body. That's how I would describe it now. At the time, I would have said, I think there's more going on here.
Wow.
So Christianity was never interested. Like, even to this day, it was always about being human.
Yeah.
And this particular tradition and these stories had something grounding and centering to say about what it means to be human. So even when I was a pastor, promoting a religion or this religion over and against this religion was just never a game that I found that interesting. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I always intuitively, the idea that there would be like sacred and secular, that there would be, these people would have truth, and these, like, it just seemed like truth, nobody had a corner on those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Like truth is there.
Yeah.
Like this idea that like religious people it just seems silly to me that Christians would like divide the world. Who are you guys to divide the world up?
Yeah.
You're just what?
Yeah.
You're a guy in a sweater vest with an acoustic guitar. What are you talking about? Like somehow you have some, come on. So, that's what, at an early age, that did something to me. That's
powerful. This is a question I was going to ask you earlier, or some point. You're creating space in your work for permissional kind of evolution in thinking and spirituality and growth, right? You're opening up conversations. That's what you've done since like I reread Velvet Elvis recently. And I was like, bro, man, you were doing this from day one. And so that's kind of a question I've always had. It's like, to do that, were you thinking, okay, I can see where there's limitations, so I can see where there's a set of thinking or doctrine or whatever that's been formed, and I want to create space beyond that so people can, it's the trampolines and bricks, like there's this flexibility and this nuance to the conversation, so you can think differently about it. Has that been a conscious thing for you, or has that just been, no, that's just how I see it? I've never thought about seeing it as this kind of limited, very linear expression. It's just
I never understood that.
Right.
I just never understood that. So I would interact with somebody who would act like that was just an assumed thing. Well, it was like that. It was, like, it was, it was like that really narrow Bible. Well, I don't, what do you like, as if that's just sort of baked into it, as opposed to you were part of a group of people who happened to interpret it that way. You also could see that it's totally badass and it reflects evolving human consciousness.
Yeah.
And is a fascinating collection of ancient poems, letters, and stories. Like, so some of it I just didn't relate to. Or people, I remember I was in a band and somebody said, well, are you a Christian band?
Yeah.
And just being like,
oh, bro, I relate
I don't
to that.
know, what does that, I just kind of, I don't understand. It's a band.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why you would put attach a word to make it more safe or palatable, or so those are always things were sort of mystifying to me.
Yeah. So I got asked recently in a blog interview, like, are you a Christian poet? And I said, you don't even know how, this is how I answered. I said, I have a wife called Kara that she's listening, I think, that I'm madly in love with.
Hi, Kara.
And if you listen to my music at some point, you'll find out about that affection I have. And, but am I a married poet? Well, yeah, I'm married.
Are you a Kara poet?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay, it's a couple more questions because I want to give the space to them. This is beautiful. Let me find this one. It's one about relationship. Okay, here we go. Do you have any advice for people trying to repair broken relationships? How can you mend something that feels impossible to mend? Dang.
It may not be mendable. So let's start there. So anybody who gives you guarantees or promises, it takes two to reconcile. And you may be open and do everything you can. May clean up your side of the street. And they may have no interest whatsoever. So you may have to love them from a distance. The flip side of loving from a distance is they may have wounded or acted in such a way that for you it's best to keep some distance. They are dangerous and toxic. And so you are loving from a distance, not by their choice, but by yours. And I have people who I have done what I could to repair it. And they want absolutely nothing to do.
Wow.
And this is what I'd say about relationships where the person wants nothing to do with repairing it. My experience of those situations, their ambivalence and antagonism towards me has almost nothing to do with me.
Wow.
I, for some reason, evoke within them a whole world of things.
Yes, right.
That has almost nothing to do with me.
Wow.
And anything that does have to do with me, you do what you can to make it right.
Yeah.
Knowing there are limits to your reconciling power. But yeah, a lot of us, I mean, who wouldn't say that? Is that one of the more painful things about the human experience?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it might be. I mean, I might think about it now. That might be the most painful thing about my life is the relationships that didn't last for one reason or another. Yeah. So in some ways you walk with the limp.
Come on.
Yeah, you walk with a limp. And yeah, for some reason that's part of this experience we're having here. Yeah. But reconciliation takes two. And then I have friends who we have hurt each other, and then you get on the phone. I'm sure you've had this, and in 10 seconds, hey, remember that thing? I'm so sorry. Yeah, dude, don't even bring it up. I got you.
We're good, man. Yeah.
We're good. 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So to forgive is to forget. In the best of relationships, the forgiving and the forgetting are instantaneous and away you go. At other times, forgiving is remembering. This person takes shots at you every time you come near, and you don't have to take that.
Yeah.
Boundaries, distance, space,
Yeah.
are all part of it.
Yeah. What about the times where there's genuine forgiveness? Think of particularly trauma, but there is no forgetting. You know, there's a moment or an experience.
Yeah.
Well,
A number of the lie with forgiveness is I will forgive them when they apologize. What that does is then make the forgiveness conditional, and they may never apologize, and you're holding this weight. So you forgive whether or not the other person acknowledges what they did or not. Forgiveness is not reconciliation. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness does not mean that you are saying that what they did wasn't serious, or painful, or wrong. Forgiveness is simply refusing to carry that weight around. Forgiveness is setting somebody free and then finding out that it's you.
That's so good. Yes.
That's how it works.
Oh, bruv, there's so many good questions. All right, give me a second. All right, let's do this one. Rob, what do you do with the temptation? And we've kind of covered this, but it's just specific. What do you do with the temptation or the feeling of the temptation to feel jealous or compare yourself to others? Is that something that happens to Rob Bell? Is that something that you have to comparison? Does that still linger?
You have to always return to your own sense of deep knowing. Who am I? Who am I here to be? And what is the next thing I'm here to do?
Yeah.
And it's easy. So yes, I live, they're the Hollywood Hills, right? Can you see them? Right there. So the smartest, the richest, the most talented, the most competitive, the most driven, the most accomplished people live on that hill. Yeah. So you can see that as, oh, I wish I had that. But then you have to pay attention because that person was on a movie set for 10 months of last year.
Yes.
Right. Well, I'm apart from my family for 2 days and I'm a wreck.
Yeah.
You want that?
Yeah. Right. Right.
So part of it is you cannot judge what you do know about yourself with what you don't know about them.
Oh, say that one more time, bro.
You cannot compare or judge what you do know about yourself with what you don't know about them. So actually, one of the gifts of living where we do is I see stuff up close. And how do I even say this? I don't want to be negative, but I want to be truthful. Most of the time, that extraordinary jealous-inducing success that you're seeing from afar, the cost was devastating for the person. What it took. Once in a while, I interact with somebody who you've heard of. And they're a sane, whole person who actually enjoys their work and their life. But that is honestly so rare. And so my experience of meeting people who I have admired and being like, oh my God, look what this did to them. Has actually been heartbreaking, to be honest. So the person's question about jealousy and all that, I sometimes feel like I got to go into the heart of all that. And it over especially the past, I'd say 5 years, it cured me of
Mm.
that, like, ooh, that might be nice. Nope.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
turn the car around and get down. Get
Yeah.
down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The
Wow.
most which is why, like, in the first part of our conversation, the most interesting thing is always the thing happening right in around
Yes.
you and in your
Yes.
chest. What's the next
Yes. Oh,
thing?
it's so liberating, man.
It is so liberating. I'm working on the things right now, the writing I'm doing right now. I don't know if anything's more interesting to me right now. Like,
Oh, it's so good.
so
Oh, it's so good.
that's where it works.
Yeah.
That's where it works.
Someone has asked, with your work, how do you write? And do you schedule your writing? Like, how do you approach it? Um, Great question.
An idea begins to emerge. After a while, if it's still hanging around, then I either a notebook or on this computer, like I'll start making notes.
Mm-hmm.
The next book that I'm going to write is sitting right here. It's right next to your face, Joshua. Like
Bro.
right off of the Zoom screen is the thumbnail of the Pages document, and the title of the book is below it, and the book is all outlined. And so when I do have ideas about it, I drop it in that outline.
Nice.
And I'm probably a month away, because I now know once I sit down and open up the faucet,
Yeah.
then we're in. We're going to be in for a while.
Yeah.
So I can now feel it. It's probably a month out. Probably a month out.
That's amazing.
And then I'll sit down probably every morning, give or take 5 days a week for the next, until the first draft. Yeah, and that will be, it will be like an experience. Like, I'll be in a mode.
Yes.
And it'll get like tunnel. A lot of things will fade away because I will be in that mode. So I know now, don't step in till you're ready.
Okay.
Because it demands something that I have to organize my whole life around. And then the person's question, a couple hours a day at the most.
Right. Okay.
And then set it down and walk away.
Okay.
And come back the next day. For me, it's not 12 hours a day. I don't know anybody who can like just sit there and type all day.
Yeah.
It's a concentrated burst, but then the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day. And if you just keep going, you'd be shocked at what can be done just 1,000 whacks at it.
Yes. So a couple more questions on that.
I should say this one more thing. I think I'm gonna do a writing class.
Oh, come on.
In a couple of months.
Bruv.
I was thinking I would do a writing class online.
Yes.
So
okay.
That's coming.
That's amazing. Well, I was going to ask you, I read this interview with Kendrick Lamar, and he puts out albums not so frequently. And when he does, they're classics,
Right.
I remember there was this kind of, people were saying, why isn't Kendrick spoken into this moment of, civil unrest, social injustice? And the response was, he put out To Pimp a Butterfly.
Yeah.
He already
did. Yeah. What else has he been talking about for years?
He put out a classic 3 years ago, and it was, but something that he was talking about was, he said, when it comes upon me and it's time to do it, then it's time to do it. And my wife knows it, my manager knows it. We could be in Latvia on tour, and he'll know to cancel every sort of press interview and just book the closest studio, and I'm in, And just wondering, when you're in that mode, what's the balance with everything we've talked about tonight, with family, with just keeping that shalom, just staying in a place of, can you get into
the burst? Just a burst in the morning.
Yeah.
Otherwise, walking the dog and hanging out with my kids and going to the grocery store and going surfing, and those things don't, because that's where you maintain the health and the vitality.
That's good.
And perspective, so that you even have anything to say. So this, some people go away and they lock themselves in a cabin. That's fine.
Yeah.
For me, I don't have a life like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, that's good.
I'll sit. Oh, and here's and each book is written. Each book announces what it is, and my next book will be written. All of my books, except for this newest one, the Everything Spiritual, were written on the same desk.
Oh
So for
wow.
20 years, I've had the same desk, but this new book has been already. I was like, oh, I'm going to write. I'm getting a new desk.
Wow.
So let me tell you that, and I tell the person that because the weirdest stuff will come to you. Like this
Yeah.
book, my book Drops Like Stars, I wrote longhand on pen and paper.
Really?
Um, Everything is Spiritual was written on this laptop on tour in my front yard, was written on the move.
Mm.
But the next one I'm getting like a new desk for some reason. A friend of mine, every time she finishes a book, she sells the house that she wrote the book in
Wow.
because the book is so associated with that
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's very, very,
Um,
very strange how that works.
what would you say is someone writing their first book? Just specifically, there's a couple questions around there.
Oh yeah. Watch this. That'll be in my new writing class. Watch
There
for
you
it.
go. There you
But
go.
the number one thing for someone writing a new book is people often collapse what I would call step 1 and step 2. Step 1 is the vomit. Step 2 is standing back and studying the vomit.
Okay.
So step 1, and those are two very different modes. So the first thing to do is get rid of your edit button, get rid of what people will think, get rid of is it any good,
Yeah.
and just get it all out.
Yeah, that's good.
You don't know what's in there.
Yeah.
So just get it all out and stop wondering as you're typing if this is the first chapter or last chapter or if it's any good or if it makes sense. We don't know. We don't care right now.
Yeah.
Second step is you step out of the experience and then you look at it and see what it is.
Yes.
Which is a very different consciousness because now you're analyzing it to see, is this even anything? And what happens often is first time writers collapse those two and they're writing, also editing it and wondering.
Yeah, right.
No, stay in. Just, man, let that cloud park over top of you and just download.
Let it come. Yeah.
We'll wonder if it's rubbish later.
Yeah.
And it might be.
Yeah.
Honestly, it might be. I don't know.
Yeah.
But one thing you won't know is you won't know in the moment.
Yeah, that's good. That's very helpful. You down for a couple more?
Of course, let's do a couple more.
We'll do a couple more, and then we've got 10 minutes left because then we're hitting 9:30, and 9:30 is like when English people. That's appropriate time in the middle of the week to start getting your pajamas on, making that final cup of tea. All right.
You people and your tea.
Oh, bro, come on.
I love it. I love it.
What is your tea? What is your I'm gonna have this throughout the day.
Ginger lemon.
Oh, ginger lemon.
If
Nice.
actual tea, ginger lemon.
Nice.
But otherwise, we have a lemon tree right behind that tree.
Nice.
And most of the year it produces these massive lemons. So a homemade lemonade.
Oh, beautiful.
Is the drink of choice.
Beautiful. So
with a touch of ginger and maybe a touch of strawberry.
Oh, there you
Way
go.
we go.
Come on, bro.
Mm-hmm.
This one's from my wife. This one's from Kara. I told you that we just
had Kara. Hi, Kara.
This is a great question. How did you start to talk about spirit, the divine, with your children?
Not much, actually. And here's why. I've done this with a number of audiences all over the place. When anybody asks about what do you do with your kids, I'll always say to the crowd, okay, I'm going to ask you a few questions. And so I'll say, question number 1, when you were growing up, was your parents' marriage the kind of marriage you wanted to have someday?
Wow.
And what's interesting is any country, anywhere in the world, any audience, everybody has an instant yes or no on that.
Mm-hmm.
Second question, when you were growing up, did the message you received from your parents, was it life is an adventure you get to go on, or life is a trial to be endured?
Wow.
Let's do one more. Well, here's a third one. did your parents grow younger as they grew older?
Hmm.
Or did they at some point settle?
Wow.
So, Kara, what's interesting is everybody that I've ever asked those questions to has instant responses. So apparently, parents teach kids a whole world of good and not so good without saying a word.
Oof. Wow.
Without even intending to in some
Wow.
cases. So every time I meet a parent, and what happens often is the parent, this question isn't, but there's an anxiety I can feel in the question of like, I need to teach my kids something. Too late.
Right.
They've seen you in traffic. They've seen you in conflict.
That's good, man.
They've seen you in finances. They see nutrition, sleep, exercise, how you care for your body. Your kid isn't fuzzy. You're teaching them how you see the world, and they know whether it works for you or not. So, especially when it comes to religion or anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, I guess you could say whatever you want.
Yeah.
But you're already saying a world of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Kristen and I actually always just had this sense, this is their journey to go on.
Yeah.
And the gift we give them is to work our stuff out.
That's stunning.
Yeah. So I honestly,
beautiful.
especially super religious people, once again, not Kara's question, but super religious people who are anxious about whether or not their kids are become religious, I honestly will just say to the parent, it's not an important question. You have to, and which is very disorienting sometimes for the parent.
Right.
The question that you think is the most important question is not an important question.
Yeah.
Because your anxiety is actually what you're handing them.
Yeah.
So tell you what, live your thing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And if it works, that is they'll at some point begin to ask you developmentally.
Yeah. Yeah.
That how could they not?
Yeah.
So our kids aren't. We never. I don't think our kids even ever went much to anything.
Right.
Because just in the course of life, you end up talking about all the stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll cover all the big ones anyway, just because you're living with your kid.
Yeah. Because it all matters.
And especially, there's another one for Kara that she might. When your kid starts asking like giant questions, like how did the universe get here and who invented love?
Yeah.
And oftentimes a parent, what do I do when they ask them these questions that I don't have even begin to know how to wise or evil? I don't even begin to know how to answer those things. Yeah. Could there be a better answer than, man, welcome to the questions everybody's been asking for thousands of years. Welcome to the tribe.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You affirm the question.
Yeah. Oh, that's good, bro.
I know.
Yeah.
I have the same questions.
Yeah.
I know.
It's so good. Sometimes, and we both know, we both seen this, maybe in ourselves at times and with others, where questions, you talked about that process that leads to despair, and sometimes that pursuit of answers leads us to this point of despair or disillusion, and you just kind of, you're not building anything anymore. You just kind of burn a lot of things. And when I was reading your book, and I thought, man, you're still telling these Jesus stories. You're still digging into these stories and bringing new things out of them.
Yeah.
And a genuine question that came out of me, I guess at 30, looking at where you've traveled and where you are now, is what has kept you? We all know people that just said, this doesn't work anymore, and I'm out. And and you're still here. You're still digging into these ancient stories and exploring what it means to be human and what it means to live with spirit and live with the divine. What's kept you, bro? Why are you still doing this?
Well, the first thing I'd say is, for some people, the intellectual dishonesty, the oppression, the misogyny that were intertwined with Church, God, Jesus, Bible, scarred or stained that tradition to where the wound doesn't allow access without, there's too much emotion and history
Wow.
there.
Wow.
And to that person, I say, yeah, that makes sense. If that was used to do that to you, you'd want nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
So the person who's like, honestly, just some of those words and I'm out.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. Secondly, for the person who's walked away, I get it. But you still have an itch.
Mm-hmm.
So you still want a path, some way to not have the world split you into a million pieces.
Yeah.
Some integrating path that gives you a center. And so however you find that, what happened to me is everything I went looking for, I would end up realizing, I think this is actually in the lineage that I come from. So 12th century, Meister Eckhart was a German mystic.
Oh, Meister, come on.
Therese of Lisieux, Hildegard. I mean, you go down these in 2nd century Celtic spirituality.
Yeah.
The sacred feminine.
Yeah.
Care for the earth.
Yeah.
Were central tenets.
Yeah.
So in the Hebrew prophets, you have the warning that if you have a widening gap between rich and poor, your entire culture will collapse.
Yeah.
So what I just kept finding is what are considered the most progressive, evolved causes in the world are all there.
Yeah.
In this tradition.
Yeah. You're just going
back. I just found it a wonderful place to start from. You know, some composers each day start in the next half step key up.
Right.
So yesterday we were in G, today I'll start in G sharp.
Yeah.
Who knows where the composing will go, but today we'll start in G sharp, tomorrow we'll start in A.
Come on.
This for me has been a meaningful home base, path, center, starting point for the exploration.
Yeah. I speak, I think, on behalf of everyone. I say thank you for doing it, bro. Thank you for giving yourself to the work. Thank you for creating the spaces you've created. How we got like minutes left. Can we end with this, bro? I'm putting you on the spot here. I'm putting you on the spot.
This has been so great.
If you were here in the building, you'd be ending this time with a benediction.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Can you leave us with one?
Absolutely. A very special pandemic edition benediction. I would say, may you, in the midst of disruption, upheaval, and disorientation, instead of stepping back, stepping away, closing your eyes, may you open them all the more, because spirit is somewhere in these deep waters. There's some new creation waiting to come out of even this. And may you be ready for it when it comes.
Come on.
Grace and peace.
Hey, everyone's clapping right now, Rob. Everyone's standing up. Rob, thank you so. We've been chatting for like 2 hours, man. Plus like half an hour before that. This has been amazing. Thank you.
I loved it. You and I, man, we're friends.
We're friends, Rob.
When I met you, I was like, oh yeah, that guy and I are gonna be friends. Yeah, we're gonna be friends.
Well, mate, when I get on that flight, I'll cross the pond and we'll hang out in the back house.
Yeah, good.
We'll do it.
Good. Send the music my way.
I will. Love you all so much. Thank you for tuning in. This has been a special night.
Thank you, everybody.
There's no easy way to end an online event.
Great questions too.
Oh, yeah,
great questions. Bye, Kara.